One of the biggest misnomers and misconceptions in modern day parlance is people referring to capitalism as an economic system. It most definitely is not. Most people mean free market economy when they say capitalism, but most have no idea that they're doing it. And there's problems with calling a system free market economy as well. Very simplistically put, a free market economy is one where consumer choices drive the markets and outcomes. And what that is really, it's a theoretical construct that sort of allows us to look at any given economy or market and think, how can we improve it and make it more efficient? But in the real world, free market economies like we think of don't really exist. So in a free market economy, there's many sellers who are price takers, and there's unobstructed market entry. When you think about organically, that isn't the way markets and economies work. A good example would be the Old West and the blacksmith. Now, it's a natural thing, but the blacksmith has a monopoly there. So it's not a free market economy. He has no competition. He can pretty much charge whatever price he wants, and he's a monopolist there. It's not a free market economy where there's a bunch of sellers competing for whatever they want, and no individual has any market power to set a price, and the consumers would set the price when there's a real free market economy. In that example, the blacksmith can charge pretty much whatever he wants, and he has no competition to change that. Of course, the behavior, and that's a whole other story. The behavior of the seller still will affect what he can charge, but it's still a much higher price than there would be if he had competition in the market. So what is capitalism? Capitalism is a convergence of societal and technological advancements that took place at a certain time in history. It's sort of labeled the Industrial Revolution, and it was basically three things that happened. There were advances in monetary policy. So when you have to barter to move your goods, it can be really sticky and slow things down. You have to figure out how many chickens or how many like apples you're going to trade for the socks you made. And things don't happen quickly that way. It becomes sort of a stagnant thing at times. And if the person doesn't have what you want for whatever reason, then, the trade's kind of off. So things don't operate in a really slick, smooth way. But when you got improved monetary policy where you got exchange rates and you can quickly just get money for the goods, that speeds everything up, and that's what happened. Second thing was transportation technology. If I've got a whole bunch of goods to sell, but I can't even get them to where there's people that want to buy them, those goods are effectively worthless. But when you started getting things like the train and the steam engines, you weren't bound by trade winds and sales. They could only take you basically in a short and narrow sort of span of area where you could trade goods. All of a sudden, with trains and with steamships, you could pretty much take your goods wherever you wanted to. The third things were advancements in manufacturing technology, and that's where the name capitalism comes from. There was a time when you're manufacturing goods, your limiting factor was your labor. So let's say you want to make 10,000 hats. Well, it might take 10 employees a year to make those hats. So maybe you can make them, but maybe it takes you 3 years to make those 10,000 hats. And so the amount of money you could make in the transaction of selling those goods was limited by that. And maybe even then, maybe those 10 employees are too expensive for you to pay. So you're going to have to use fewer employees to do that. So it slows everything down. But what happened was with capitalism, these machines allowed you to take 2 employees and maybe make those 10,000 hats in like a month. So no longer were you bound by the amount of labor you could pay Now the limiting factor was how much raw material you could get, because you could turn that over into the goods to sell like immediately. So that's where the term capitalism comes from, because then the people who could take advantage of this, who had the wealth to buy these factories and equipments and ship them around, ship their goods around, they became known as capitalists. So they became a new class of people who could make all kinds of money by manufacturing all these goods in bulk quickly and shipping them around and quickly trading them for money and becoming rich off of it. Now, capitalism had the good, the bad, and the ugly associated with it. So what was good about capitalism is there's a good response time to consumer demands. If the capitalist sees something, a market is not being filled, he's got this factory, he reconfigures things real quick, he can pump out these goods like overnight practically, so consumers get a quick response to whatever they're doing. And if there's an underserved market that the capitalist sees, he can quickly jump in there and fill that need. Those were good things. The bad thing was when you've got manufacturing that can happen with only capital limiting you, you can have sort of a drain on the environment. You cut down a bunch of trees where before, if you're making a whole bunch of paper, it might take you years, the forest would have time to recover. Now you create a situation where you're chopping down everything and it's all gone, and maybe it never recovers like it is, or maybe it causes the water table to change. You create a desert. So things like that would happen. But one of the worst things that happened, though, as far as the bad things that would happen, is all of a sudden it moved us away from a free market economy. Of course, that's an ideal. And you look at any market, you could rate it on a scale of 0, or as a monopoly, or 100%, where it really is a theoretical, which none of them are. Let's say most markets were at an 80 at one time in world history. Well, when capitalism moved in, it started shifting it away from that ideal, because capitalists put other factories out of work that are small time, and it creates a situation where there's less and less competition, which means the people in the market, the capitalists who are manufacturing, have more and more control over the price over time. So that's the bad. What was the ugly thing created? It created this wealth inequity. So first thing it did, it put a lot of people out of work. So there was one point where it took a lot of labor to manufacture. And so the wealth that manufacturers got from goods was distributed to their employees in a much more even way. Now, since you only need a few employees and the machines are doing most of the work, it becomes cheaper to manufacture, and the capitalist, the manufacturer, gets a whole bunch of money, but he really doesn't need to pay his employees nearly as much anymore. And because the demand for the work is down, a lot of people are not even working, so they're not making money at all. So it shifted us in a situation where wealth inequality increased as well. So long story short, capitalism is not an economic system at all. It's a scheme that was expedited by advancements in manufacturing and transportation technology and monetary policy. That it created a very new and increased elitism in a class, because they could easily take capital and transform it into money.